Thanks for being here for an update on last night's flooding. Let me start by saying that I know the damage done in many of the very same communities were hardest hit on the very same day as last year is devastating. And my heart goes out to all those families, business owners, and community members alike. Please know my team, first responders and local leaders, are working around the clock to help ensure public safety will act as quickly as possible in recovery. It's important to note our response is ongoing, so we're getting more information and details every minute, and we'll keep the public updated as we do. The team will go into details shortly, but as many of you know, last night's rainfall across several counties resulted in power outages, several closed roads and bridges, many evacuations due to rushing water, damage to homes and property, and regrettably, the loss of one life at this point. My condolences go out to that family and members of that community. Yesterday, I signed an amendment to our existing state of emergency in place due to last year's floods to help make sure we were able to access and move state resources. As we reported, we had the SEOC partially activated overnight and swiftwater teams staged across the state. I want to thank those teams and all emergency responders who were very, very busy last night helping in rescues and protecting Vermonters and visitors alike. Commissioner Morrison will talk more about safety in a moment, but I urge everyone to follow her guidance. There are still safety risks out there, even as the rivers subside. It's not lost on any of us, the irony of the flood falling on the one-year anniversary to the day when many towns were hit last year. I know that only adds to the emotion many are feeling this morning, even those who were not impacted that time around. But we're ready. Our response and tools are only stronger as a result of last year, and we will get through this. The fact is, we're Vermont strong for a reason, and that means those impacted will have many, many all across the state standing with them. I want to thank you, and I'll now turn it over to Commissioner Morrison. I see Mayor Lozon is here. He wants to come up as well.
Thank you, Governor. Good morning. My name is Jennifer Morrison. I'm the Commissioner of Public Safety. Last night was a difficult and dangerous time in the northern two-thirds of the state, and we're working hard to understand the total impact. Our swiftwater teams made dozens of rescues overnight and facilitated numerous evacuations. We are still in active response mode and have multiple rescues ongoing in the Lyndonville area. We also have extensive work to do in secondary searches in the many communities that were the hardest hit. The work of our teams, as I said, is continuing. The hardest hit areas overnight, I should say, because I realize there are many, some of the hardest hit areas overnight were Moortown, Plainfield, Lyndonville, Berry, Richmond, Bolton, and Williamstown. We will undoubtedly add more to this list as damage reports are still coming in. The primary hazard overnight was flash flooding, and that has mostly resolved. Subsequently, there was some main stem river flooding. Generally speaking, rivers have crested and river flooding should wind down throughout the day. This is not true of the following locations. The Winooski River downstream from Waterbury through to Lake Champlain. This portion of the Winooski River will likely not crest until this evening, and it should fall below flood stage sometime on Friday. Likewise, the Passumpsic River in Caledonia County has not crested. We expect it to crest this afternoon and fall below flood stage this evening. And the Lamoille River near Johnson and Jeffersonville. The river is close to cresting near Johnson, and that will push high levels of water toward Jeffersonville shortly after. We are watching this area as we speak. Regardless of river levels, Our waterways are not safe right now. Currents are fast, and there is a tremendous amount of flood debris in the water. Folks really need to stay off of our rivers for the time being. The weather is going to get hot and humid in the next few days, and it may be tempting to cool off in a river or a stream, but please don't. Also, be mindful of heat-related illnesses. As you clean up or help your neighbors, stay hydrated and take frequent breaks. As the governor mentioned, as of this morning at 9 a.m., we have received one report of a weather-related fatality. This has not been officially confirmed, but it is believed to be a male from Peacham. As of 9 a.m., there are below 2,500 power outages, thanks to the hard work and dedication of our public utility partners. We expect that number to drop throughout the day. We need to remain vigilant in the days to come, as many disaster-related deaths occur after the acute phase and during cleanup and recovery. Keep your guard up and do not take chances. Those returning to their flooded homes should take precautions when entering. Do not turn on your circuit breaker or use any power source until you've had your system checked by a licensed electrician. For those with damaged property, and this includes everything, structures, vehicles, driveways, culverts, and more, please report your damages to 211, as we are collecting data for a possible federal disaster declaration. We need your information in order to paint an accurate picture of the extent of damage across the state. Homeowners should also contact their insurance company. I want to reemphasize the importance of reporting your damage to 211 by dialing 211, or preferably by visiting Vermont, spelled out Vermont, 211.org. Even if you plan to fix your damage or you don't perceive it as a big deal, your damage is part of a bigger picture that can help us reach important thresholds that trigger federal assistance. Please help out your neighbors and your community by reporting all damage from yesterday's flash floods and today's river flooding. Also, if you are displaced from your home and need shelter, call 211. Currently, the Beryl Auditorium shelter is open, and we can scale up more shelters if there is a need for them. I'll be taking questions later, but for now, I will turn things over to Secretary Flynn.
Thank you, Commissioner Morrison. Good morning. From the Agency of Transportation perspective, we currently have 54 state roads closed. I want to emphasize, we also have 6 bridges that are, I'm going to use the word impinged. We believe 3 are destroyed or severely impacted, and we're still assessing the other 3. There will be more information today. I'll go through the list of where all these are located. We have rail damage. Significant rail damage in the Middlesex area on the New England Central line, which is the Vermonter route, the Amtrak Vermonter route. We also have rail damage in Berry, Barnett, Assumpsic, Orleans, and Coventry. At this point, the rail trail, the LVRT, began to be inspected at 5:30 a.m., and I have not received any reports thus far of damage yet. Aviation is reporting no issues either. As far as public transit, all routes are open except for stops located in inaccessible areas. Green Mountain Transit canceled service until noon today. The US 2 commuter is canceled in Montpelier region until at least noon today. The remaining operators across the state are open as scheduled. The bridges that I mentioned are on Route 5 in Barnett, Route 114 in Norton, Route 105 in Charleston, Route 100B in Moortown, Route 116 in Heinsberg, and Route 17 in Starksboro. The road flows are as follows, and again, this is a quick US 5 in Lyndonville, Vermont 102 in Guildhall,
Vermont 232 in Groton, Vermont 102 in Maidstone, US 5 in St. Johnsbury, a second location on US 5 in St. Johnsbury, Vermont 17 in Bristol, Vermont 117 in Jericho, a second location on Vermont 17 in Fayston, Vermont 110 in Barry, from 302 to Old 302 up by the roundabout, Vermont 12 in Montpelier, US 5 in Lyndonville, Vermont 122 in Linden, US 302 in Eastbury, Vermont 128 in Essex, Vermont 17 in West Addison, Vermont 116 in Heinsberg, Vermont 14 in Woodbury, Vermont 58 in Brownington, Vermont 302 in East Barry, US 2 in Plainfield, Vermont 114 in Lyndonville, Vermont 2
in Marshfield, Groton at the intersection of Route 2, Vermont 14 and Vermont 15 in Hardwick by the bridge by Lamoille Valley Ford, Vermont 122 in Sheffield, Vermont 114 in Norton, US 2 in Middlesex, Vermont 114 in Newark, Vermont 141 in Canaan, US 2 in Plainfield, US 2 in Marshfield, Vermont 5 in Linden, Vermont 102 in Bloomfield, Vermont 12 from Elmore to Wrightsville, US 2 and 100 in Waterbury, Vermont 15, Morrisville to Wolcott, 108 in Stowe by the Top Notch, 100 in South Duxbury, US 302 in Topsham, Vermont 100 in Duxbury, Vermont 100B in Moortown, a second location of 100B in Moortown, Vermont 118 in St. Johnsbury, US 2 in Richmond by the Richmond Mobile, US 5 in Barnet, US 2 in St. Johnsbury, Vermont 16 in East Hardwick, US 5 in Passumpsic Village, Vermont 14 in Hardwick, Vermont 100B in another location, so third location in Moortown, Vermont 14 here near the Hope Cemetery in Berry City, Vermont 62, Vermont 14 in Williamstown, and that concludes the list of state roads. Again, I want to emphasize we are not tone deaf to what's happened on local roads, but we don't have that information at this moment. Thank you.
What was the total number of that, Joe, again?
54.
54 roads.
Correct, in 6 bridges.
Thank you.
And at this time, I'll turn it over to the Swiftwater team leader, Mike Kim. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Flynn. I'm just going to briefly go over, give you a quick synopsis of what Commissioner Morrison has given you. Our Swiftwater teams activated early yesterday morning, 13 teams made up of Vermont Swiftwater teams, 1 team from Connecticut, and earlier today, we were joined by another team from New Hampshire. All 13 of those teams worked overnight last night in the evening, and they're still working today. We do have a couple other relief crews that were brought in this morning. None of those teams have had any sleep since yesterday morning, and like I said, they continue to work as we speak. Our rescues are 118. Those are all boat-based Swiftwater rescues. 15 pets, and tragically, as the governor reported, 1 fatality. Going forward, we've requested some additional outside resources to assist us. The Vermont Army National Guard is assisting us with gathering a couple helicopter assets for some secondary searches in some of the areas that were hard hit that Commissioner Morrison described. And our search and rescue efforts are continuing, as she indicated, in the Lyndonville area where the Passumpsic River is yet to crest. And I can answer questions later, but I'll turn it over to Commissioner Haas right now. Thank you.
Hi, good morning.
Commissioner Emily Haas for the Department of Mental Health. Thank you everyone for joining us here today. And thank you first and foremost to Vermont's first responders and local officials for your immediate and swift response to protect the safety and well-being of fellow Vermonters. As we mark the 1-year anniversary since the historic flooding that hit Vermont last year, many of us are facing tough times once more. The experience of living through another flood on the anniversary of last year's disaster can be deeply re-traumatizing. It is natural for feelings of anxiety, fear, and helplessness to resurface. The sights, sounds, and even the anticipation of flooding can trigger memories and emotions tied to past trauma, making it imperative for us to come together as a community to support one another. In times of disaster, the strength and resilience of our community becomes evident. We encourage everyone to check in with your neighbors, friends, and family. Simple acts of kindness and connection can make a significant difference. A few things to keep in mind. Stay informed, but limit exposure. While it's important to stay informed, constant exposure to news coverage can increase stress. Take breaks from media to protect your mental health. When you do tune in, rely on trusted official sources for accurate information. Stay in touch with family and friends. Keep in regular contact with loved ones and neighbors to share information and check on each other's safety. Acknowledge your feelings. It's okay to feel upset, anxious, or overwhelmed, or all of those at the same time. Recognizing and accepting your emotions is the first step towards healing. And also pay attention to your physical needs. Try to maintain a routine if possible. Prioritize your self-care by resting, moving your body, and staying hydrated. Engage in calming practices like deep breathing and creative activities throughout all stages of disaster response, not just during the initial crisis. I'd like to remind folks of a few resources that we do have available. We continue to offer Starting Over Strong Vermont, which helps individuals and community recover from natural and human-caused disasters through community outreach and access to mental health services. You can access that by calling Vermont 211 to be connected to the outreach workers and resources in your particular area. We continue to operate the 988 National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Call or text 988 for immediate support from trained crisis counselors who can offer emotional support and connect you with local resources. Anyone can call 988 who needs support. Additionally, we offer a mobile crisis service for individuals. Our mobile crisis teams are on standby to provide in-person support and crisis intervention, and they can be reached through dialing 988. Additionally, as Commissioner Morrison mentioned earlier, the United Ways Vermont 211 network is a place where you can not only report your damage, but also connect with resources statewide. There are local organizations, businesses, and government entities to provide resources, which include mental health care, and other community services. In addition to those, we have the Federal Disaster Hotline, and that is also free, and that can be reached at 1-800-985-5990. I'll now turn it over to Commissioner Jason Batchelder.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jason Batchelder. I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Environmental Conservation. I'm here representing Secretary Julie Moore of the Agency of Natural Resources. Secretary sends her regards. She's on a plane heading home. Today, I'm going to provide you information and updates on dam monitoring, parks and recreation, water and wastewater concerns, flood-related spills, river corridors, and landslides. Before I get into details, I'd like to echo what Commissioner Morrison had said, and Mr. Cannon. Please avoid floodwaters that may be filled with pollutants and hazards. Follow advisories from your local emergency managers and town officials for local and wastewater system advisories. Contact our spill response team for hazardous spills if you suspect oil or other contaminants in the water when you're pumping at your basements. Report any landslides impacting structures or property. Check closures before you head into a state park or to state land to camp or hike. There are significant state land closures at this point. And most importantly, please stay safe. Note that this event is still developing and reports from the field are still being collected. Our agency will evolve our responses as new needs emerge. We are ready to support Vermonters in this challenging time. For dams, our first report is about our Winooski flood control dams. Members of the dam safety team monitor those dams, sleeping at Waterbury and monitoring others through the night, and will continue their efforts this week. The flood control dams on the Winooski are performing phenomenally, and there is plenty of capacity in Waterbury, Wrightsville, and East Barry reservoirs. I do have numbers to follow up if anyone wishes to hear them about capacity, but we have significant capacity. We do know that one low hazard dam experienced a breach last night at Harvey's Lake in Barnett. This is a low hazard dam, and inundation mapping DEC has at hand suggests no significant impact to property and no particularly large impacts to roads. What residents will see because of the way the water cut the earth is they will see a drop in the lake levels as waters do recede. To date, there are no reported issues at our hydroelectric dams from Green Mountain Power and Morrisville Water and Light. Again, our team will continue to monitor dams around the state and work with fellow dam owners and regulators. On to drinking water. Our team is actively reaching out to public water supplies in areas with reported damage. Generally, no issues have been reported. I do have an addendum that I just received that I'd like to read. Currently, there is one do not drink notice in Lindenville and 4 boil water notices in Barnett, Plainfield, St. Johnsbury, and Berry City. The Berry City update, the boil water notice is precautionary. There is no known damage to the water system infrastructure or the treatment plant and distribution facilities. The city has begun sampling to lift the boil water notice as soon as possible and anticipates lifting it by tomorrow or Friday if sampling indicates water is safe. They have indicated they are requesting 7 days of alternate water supply for a population of 10,000, 2 days of alternate water for that same segment of the population. Bottled water is preferred at the auditorium location, but this should be confirmed through the SEOC. On to wastewater. Several wastewater treatment plants experienced exceedingly high flows through their systems, as you can imagine. Information is still coming in. 6 authorized combined sewer overflows, or CSOs, were reported: Rutland, St. Johnsbury, Montpelier, St. Albans, Burlington, and Middlebury. We're aware that the Linden wastewater treatment facility was evacuated due to high water. On to parks. In the coming days, our focus will be on health and safety for campers and park staff. We will be assessing damage and communicating to people with reservations this weekend. We can report that campers at Stillwater and Rickerbond State Parks in Groton were relocated to high ground to avoid floodwaters. We are encouraging park visitors and hikers to check the park's website for the status of park closures and check Trail Finder on our website for trail closures. Landslides. Our geology team has not received any reports as of 8:30 this morning. This significant amount of water will undoubtedly lead to some action in that arena. Waste management. Our Waste Management Division continues to monitor the situation and is prepared to offer support as needed. Please report spills of oil, fuel, or other hazardous material as a result of flooding. If you are experiencing these issues, please call 802-828-1138 during the day, business hours, and 800-641-5005 after business hours. The state has contractors available to assist homeowners who have heating oil releases or see a sheen on floodwaters in their home. And rivers, according to our rivers program, it is still very early in our assessment and are waiting for local liaison reporting, which will help craft a better picture. If you have questions about managing your river corridor near your property or on it, please contact a DEC river engineer before you begin any work. And now I'm going to turn it back over to the governor. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kelly. We'll now open up to questions.
I was wondering if Mayor Lazone's here for you kind of get a status update on what Barry's looking like at this point this morning.
Certainly. Well, just to recap and compare this event to 23, water rose very, very quickly, just in terms of the duration. The water came up very quickly in the course of maybe an hour and a half. By 7:30, the Stevens Branch had breached its banks. We had stood up our emergency operations center. The next 2 hours were pretty much spent in observation at approximately 9:30, and I apologize. I should have said before I even started, thank you. Thank you to the governor. Thank you to Secretary Flynn, who was kind enough to meet me at about 1 o'clock this morning. Came back to City Hall. The governor was in contact with us well after midnight. So thank you to everyone. The Soup Water team, thank you very much for what you did for us. It's tough. It's tough to watch folks in your community suffer and go through this again. But as I stand here, a bit discouraged, I'm also very proud. By 5 o'clock this morning, our crews were out cleaning up the mud, cleaning up the debris. By 8 o'clock this morning, we had stations throughout the city making sure people had fresh drinking water. There is a boil water notice in effect. By 10 o'clock, we were deploying mental health professionals to assist neighbors who might be experiencing trauma. And as I stand here today, right now, I'm sure that everyone is hard at work. We are getting this done, and we couldn't have done it without the help of our partners at the state. So, as I said, in terms of the event itself, the big difference was the volume of water. It came up very quickly. Someone was looking over us because the rain stopped about 9:30, and we saw another band that was supposed to come through at about 10 or 10:30. That band didn't arrive until just around midnight. So that 2-hour break in the storm allowed the river to recede approximately 3 feet, allowed us to regroup, catch our breath. But like I said, we've got a lot of work to do, and as I talk about Barry, I just want to say I'm not unmindful of what other communities are experiencing, and my heart goes out to them as well. I know we have a few more resources in Barry, and I know for some of the smaller communities in central Vermont, this is especially hard. So, as soon as we're able, as soon as we have our situation where we need to have it be, we'll be making sure that we're reaching out to our neighbors. And I just know we're all going to take care of each other. I don't know if you have. It's probably a lot more information than you wanted.
Yeah, that was good. Thank you.
Commissioner Morrison, would you be able to give us any more details on the one fatality? So it was a man from Peacham. Is that confirmed? What piece of that is unconfirmed? I'm a little unclear.
So we can't confirm that it's weather-related until the autopsy reveals the cause of death, and that has not happened yet, so I can't tell you that it's weather-related. We suspect it is weather-related, and I can't give you the name and the age until that process plays out and we confirm that all next of kin have been notified. So,
But it's definitely a man from Peacham.
I am told it is a man from Peacham. I have been told things that were not accurate in the past, but I do believe that to be true.
Okay. And did it happen in Peachum?
I believe that is also true.
Okay.
Can you tell us why you think it might be weather related? Is it someone in their yard, someone in their basement, someone on the roof of their
It
house?
appears to have been someone in a type of vehicle that got swept away in water.
Can you say the type of vehicle?
Not just yet, I don't have the
Boat
details.
or wheeled or anything like that?
Wheeled.
Wheeled vehicle, thank you.
Governor, in terms of infrastructure loss, how does this compare to last year's floods and Hurricane Irene?
Yeah, well, we're still assessing and receiving the details. Just anecdotally, it doesn't appear to have the magnitude from a financial standpoint as a year ago. But that doesn't mean that it didn't impact homeowners and folks who lost their infrastructure, driveways and so forth that are suffering today. So we'll continue to assess, and we'll be in contact with FEMA directly. I did have a conversation with FEMA, with the director of FEMA yesterday in anticipation of the storm. So they're very willing and able to help whenever we develop.
Sticking with FEMA, I was on a tour with them on Tuesday in Stowe in Lamoille County. Does that help at all that they're already in the state, or are they just kind of in their own respective place in Lamoille looking at the events from late June?
Yeah, I wondered the same thing, whether they're going to be able to associate what went with what, with the damage. Stowe got hit as well, very hard last night. And so, along with the damage they received in the last month, they received more. So, again, we're going to hear many communities. I saw some pictures from Facebook this morning there's a lot of damage there as well. So we're going to hear some of the smaller communities that have a great deal of damage due to this event.
Governor, or someone on your team, can you speak to whether you feel as though the forecasts in this event were accurate and that what played out was reasonably well predicted, or was this worse than what some of the forecasts were calling for?
You know, it was a little bit difficult. We had briefings all day yesterday to try and anticipate and listening to some of your forecasts as well in some of the media. The modeling was difficult. Didn't know exactly what path it was going to take, but generally we thought it was going to hit right through the central part of the state, from west to east, and that's pretty much what happened. Moved up a little bit at one point during the day, but the rainfall numbers exceeded in some areas and were less in others. So all in all, I think they did a pretty good job in giving us the information. That's why we prepared. That's why we called why we had an amendment to the existing state of emergency so that we could access more resources. The Connecticut team calling them up yesterday and having them assist us was in anticipation of just exactly what we received.
I think last year this time you held a press conference like maybe 2 or maybe 3 days before the actual event hit us, which I think was credited with doing a great deal to help people be extremely aware of what was coming and brace for it. This time, did what you saw yesterday not merit sort of a all hands on deck kind of get the word out, or did you do that?
We did do that.
Okay.
We put out a number of releases along the way. In fact, when we had our event, press event in Cabot, we talked about this and wanted to prepare people.
Got it.
So it was anticipated, and we tried to warn people. And I want to give credit to the media. I saw a lot of information flowing from all of you to your listeners and viewers. That was helpful, and I think that prepared them as well.
My last follow-up is I just spoke to a couple in Waterbury, and they were looking at the NOAA site that tracks river cresting, anticipated times and heights, and they said that they noticed last night they were being told that the river and when the Winooski River was going to be cresting at sort of 418 or so, and that it actually, when all is said and done this morning, it was more like 425, just like a foot off of the record last year. So I think when it comes to river levels, I know it's hard to anticipate, but some of the models were not on target, and that they were very frustrated by that.
You know, again, I reflected on that yesterday because it really depended on where we received all the rain. You know, and that's where the modeling comes in. It's not, you know, it's not an exact science.
Right.
So they did the best they could. We were preparing for the worst, and where it landed would impact those communities
Right.
obviously more, and some of the tributaries and the main river corridors as well. So again, last year we saw a lot of damage down in the Ludlow area. The river exceeding capacity there. We saw it in the Winooski and the Moyle a year ago. This time around, we saw more. Thumbsick is heavily impacted, but so there's more that we're seeing that are going to be cresting. The good news again is that some of them have already crested and they're receding, and hopefully we'll get through the next span of Winooski in particular going down through Richmond, Essex area as it crests.
How optimistic are you that we'll get a federally declared disaster? And do you think it'll be the kind where there's public assistance and individual assistance, or probably just public assistance?
Again, we'll have to see without having all of the details and all the information over the last 12 hours or so. But I would assume there will be some public assistance as well as I believe we'll receive a federal declaration approval.
On the topic of FEMA, do you have a message to people still struggling to get assistance from the agency?
Still struggling, you mean with this going or?
From last year.
From last year. Yeah, we still have a number of cases that are open. We're still working our way through that. And that's not separate in some respects, but it is separate. So we continue to work on those cases with them and report to us. We've got a fireman leading the charge, and that the chief recovery officer, and he will continue to take that information in. So we should continue.
Thank you.
Mike, I didn't quite catch when you said 15 pets. Was that 15 pets evacuated, or who died?
That was 15 household pets that were removed, assortment of cats and dogs.
Wait, I'm sorry, I didn't catch it.
Yeah, it was an assortment of cat and dogs, private ownership.
But did they die?
No, they were alive. We read
Oh, okay. They were
transported with the owners.
And that was 118, so people?
118 boat-based rescues, so they were moved from either cars or the homes or fields or wherever they were stranded.
Okay. But that might be more people? Is it 118 rescues or
Well,
118?
118 that we've been able to classify with the 13 Swiftwater teams that were out there. We know there are more rescues made by Berry City Fire Department before we got there. Some of these other communities that we didn't have a Swiftwater rescue team there immediately. So there are more rescues. We know that.
I think what she's getting at though is could have been one rescue and 3 people in that rescue.
No, those are actual victim numbers or patient numbers.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I have a question for Commissioner Morrison.
Sure.
Can you discuss a little bit about the 211 system, which last year had a little stress?
Sure.
This year, how did it perform, and what changes did you make with your contract to allow it to perform better?
So the contract aside, there's a lot of moving parts here. They have funding for 24/7 now, and they have added resources. We have been in touch with them for days before this event, and they were beefing up staffing. So I don't know how it has performed in the last 2 hours since, people woke up, or 3 hours since they woke up in daylight and they started to realize they had damage. So I don't have an answer for you. I've had no feedback, positive or negative, about how it's performed, and we can report back on that tomorrow. But we have certainly added resources. We've been working very closely with them in the last few days in anticipation of this event. And there are other changes that we're making in the new contract, which will allow us, the state, to access certain types of information much more quickly than we were able to last time around. So, as the governor alluded to, we learned a lot last year, and there are a lot of things that are moving more quickly. And this is an example of where we hope to yield notable improvement, and we'll get back to you next time with a brief.
Just to be clear though, so the contract with 211 is the same as it was this time last year? You don't have a new contract with changes?
We do, but I don't know as though it's been signed, like it's being finalized. So when I say, do we have a new contract, I can't tell you if it's been signed, but it's in the process of being finalized, and it has changes to it in terms of staffing and access to data and performance metrics. So
That are in play now, or that will be in play once the contract is signed?
I think we're splitting hairs because we have made the expectations really clear in partnership with 211
Okay.
about the performance metrics. So if you want to know the details about a written and signed contract, I'd be happy to have somebody in the administrative office chase that down. But for performance issues, we're all really clear about the improvements that needed to happen over last year, and they've been very willing partners who want to step up and serve our community in the ways that people need to be served.
Okay.
So we're very optimistic. If we have to change that narrative in the next briefing, we will tell it like it is.
Okay.
Thank you for your question.
There was a number of towns that had sewage overflow. I didn't catch all the towns. I was hoping I could maybe, I think he talked about it.
Thank you. Let me just see if I can find it here. Those were Rutland, St. Johnsbury, Montpelier, St. Albans, Burlington, and Middlebury.
Thank you. That's all.
Governor or Commissioner Morrison, has there been any damage reported at any medical facilities?
Not that I'm aware of.
No.
Okay. And are there any concerns with supply chain as far as people being able to get medical treatment and medicine and whatnot?
Well, obviously, we do have a number of roads that are difficult to travel on and get through, so it's always a concern. And so we'll continue to do whatever we can to assist, but Route 2 being closed makes it more difficult to get treatment when we need it. But we'll work our way through it.
Governor, obviously this is the second year in a row of major damage, and a lot of communities haven't had the opportunity to clean up exactly from last year. What do you have to say to the homeowners, kind of ease their minds that this won't happen year after year?
I can't assure them that it won't happen year after year. What we need to do, obviously, is to build that better. And that means a lot of different things, but that's what our mission is. And make sure that we're building in places that are impacted. But we'll get through this, and we'll get it cleaned up as we did last time around. And it's an ongoing effort. As I mentioned, it was on Tuesday in the press briefing, we just finished the last project with Irene. That was 12 years later, and it was about a year. So it takes a long time to recover, it takes a long time to clean up. But a lot longer than it took to do the initial damage, that's for sure. But we'll stay vigilant and we'll get it done.
I have a question for the governor and one for Commissioner Flynn. Governor, do you know what the status is of the effort to get the federal government to analyze the hydrology of the Winooski Basin so that we can kind of manage the dams better or get some?
We're working together on that as we speak. Do you have any information on that basin? Julia talked about that, I think, on Tuesday, but.
Sure, I have a little bit of that. Very high level, the colonel with the Army Corps of Engineers actually arrives, I believe it's July 30th, for a tour. Oh, we did have one visit, we have one coming up as well. That's, I was briefed on this one yesterday. But yes, I have to speak very high on this, and I can certainly find out more for you on this topic.
But so we don't know if they're funding the study that we asked them to fund. It's a year later, and we just want to know if they're going to fund it or not.
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, we'll follow up later. And then Commissioner Flynn, how did the garage do that you're moving out of? You're still using it, and I think you still have dozens and dozens of vehicles there, right? How did it go?
Yeah, well, I think you'll see most of the vehicles are here. Dave Ferber, our fleet manager, and his team down there started moving vehicles on Tuesday, I think it was. I stood in the same place last night that I stood a year ago, and I took video. And the pond brook that comes down from like the hospital in Berlin was raging, but not quite as much as last year. It did overtop 302 for a period, but not as much last year. When I last left there before midnight, there was standing water in the parking lot areas, but it did not appear that it had gotten into the garage facility in the back, which was our makeshift facility after last year. I haven't had a chance to speak to Dave this morning, but I think I would have heard if it had gotten into the building. All the mechanics took home their tools. Those were all lost last time. So our level of preparedness was greater because we had more notice, and we also, we saw it coming, and we lived through last year.
You still plan to get out of that facility, that property, and build a new garage, right?
We do, actually. We signed an agreement to purchase land, and we're actively pursuing the next steps to reconstruct the facility for our fleet, and then working with A&R and others. Eventually, as you heard the governor say, look to that 8-acre property on Route 302 as a potential place to store water, get it back to the river.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Governor, do you have any thoughts to share about the fact that, it looks like Vermont's long-term recovery is going to, happen at the same time as it continues to respond. And so, but the fact that we have to be in active response mode and long-term recovery mode probably for the foreseeable future.
Sure. It's always difficult in terms of the type of storm it is. As I mentioned, I think at the briefing on Tuesday, that the storm was different during our it was almost a one-day event, and then the next day we all woke up, the sun was shining, and we went to work. We assessed the damage, and everyone went to work and trying to recover. Last year's storm was different. We had the initial onslaught of rain, and then it continued to rain for a couple of weeks. We had different storms that were coming through that weren't all tied together. So it kept impacting us day after day after day in terms of recovery and response. So this storm, it appears, at least at this point, will be more like, in some respects, the Irene storm. So the recovery response should be fairly quick. The recovery will take some time. And then we'll just add that right in to what we're already doing. So I don't believe it will be a conflict between response and recovery as much as we were in the last year.
Governor, this is now the third flood in 1 year, and a lot of our readers and a number of Vermonters are concerned about geoengineering and persistent weather and climate modification appearing in the skies of Vermont. Do you have any comment on that?
I would just say that climate change is real. I think we all need to come to grips with that, regardless of political persuasion, and deal with it, because we need to build back a stronger, safer, and smarter than we had before. So, from my standpoint, I think the rain events are caused by carbon emissions, so over a long period of time. There's not a flip of the switch that's going to fix that or counter that. But if we just need to prepare for what's going to continue over the next number of years, regardless of what we do overall with our strategy to counteract that. and make sure that we have the capacity to store the water during these intense storms. I think that's the key. So we'll continue to advocate for that. The river corridor study will help with that as well, to make sure that we're not building in places we shouldn't be building, and then we're actually buying out some of the locations where we can turn that in, like some of the garage into areas where we can store that water during these intense storms.
Speaking of buyouts, what's the status of buyouts in both by the state and by the feds at this point from last year, and then how does that affect
Yeah, it's
this year?
continuing and it's complicated. And some municipalities have a role to play in this, and I'm sure the mayor knows this better than all of us. But while we want to protect people, obviously, once there's a buyout and we can't build there again, and we lose the grandness value, and then you have to figure out where are people going to live. So it's a little more complicated than just saying we buy all these places out and do something different. We had a housing crisis before this happened, and this exacerbated the situation. So again, whoever's in power and in charge, and legislative leaders in the next session, we need to treat the housing crisis as the crisis it is. And that means doing some things that may not be comfortable, but we need to it's like all hands on deck. We need to figure out a way to build more housing at less cost and faster than we've been doing. We just failed to meet the moment in the last session.
Okay, we'll move to the phones now. Keith Whitcomb, Rutland Herald.
No.
Tom Davis, Compass, Vermont. It's easy. Sandy Usen, Waterbury Roundabout.
There's 2 phone numbers, so.
Okay. Kevin Cullen, Boston Globe.
He's on though.
All right, we'll follow up with the reporters online after this to get their questions. Any more from the room? Governor, if there may be 2 or 3 lessons learned from last year that you're taking into this week, what might they be?
Well, again, prepare for the worst, which we did last time around, as well as this time. But we're better at it in some respects. We learned a lot from the last storm, as we did before that with Irene, and we just take the lessons learned and try and do that, and we'll do the same thing here. So there's not any one thing that I would point to, but numerous areas where we can always improve. We'll do just that.
How are you feeling about the level of support received from the federal government? I mean, FEMA got its top off to the disaster relief fund last year, but other than that, Vermont's request for supplemental funding went completely unanswered. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, the supplemental funding is somewhat ongoing, but it's tough for Congress to get anything done at this point in time. And we're looking for other avenues, and working with the congressional delegation to do that. There are buckets of money and other programs that we need to access, and they're helping us assist us to get, to get to the goal. And I think that we'll get there eventually. We'll have to do it in other phases. But again, I think we all work together and we'll figure it out.
What would those buckets
It was
be?
like the EPA money
Okay.
that would assist in some of the housing that they're looking at. And agree with that, but I think there's a good likelihood that we should be able to see that. Thank you all very much. Thank you.